Need high-quality video to promote your event, business, or band? We can help.
We're Pixel Pond, a video production team based in the Pacific Northwest, providing high-quality content to clients across the U.S. and Canada.
Whether you want coverage of your live event to promote for next year, or need a camera and a camera operator for your next big project, we can accommodate projects of all sizes.
Your story is important. Visit pixelpondllc.com or send an email to info@pixelpondllc.com to get started today. We can't wait to work with you.
This time on Gamers Week podcast. Concord's initial development deal was around $200 million, according to a new report, offering a glimpse of how much it cost Sony to develop its disastrous live service game, which lasted just 2 weeks, before being unceremoniously shuttered.
This was 8 years ago when Overwatch was the hottest thing out there, right?
Yeah.
And everyone was gushing over this. And they're like, you know what? This is going to be great. We're going to push this out, and this genre is never going to die. Well, apparently they didn't call Miss Cleo and ask for her advice.
Miss Cleo.
Oh my God. That's a deep cut. Miss Cleo.
Rest in peace.
I wonder how Miss Cleo. Oh, she's dead?
I think she's dead.
She didn't see that coming, huh?
No.
I could go put on my Spider-Man onesie, but I would be roasting because it's like 80 degrees here in St. Louis.
You know what? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with you
I
roasting.
feel the need to see this Spider-Man onesie.
Right. Where does one buy a Yoshi hoodie?
On Amazon, where one buys everything.
Of course, right?
And it even prompts you to buy the matching glasses. So I was like, you know what? I think I will. I think I will buy the matching Yoshi glasses.
And they saw you coming for a mile.
Well, I'm kind of test driving this because we have to dress up tomorrow at work. So
I see. And you got something where you can't see your eyes. A freaking genius.
I am smart. Scary smart.
Thwip.
Could you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Could you switch back to the t-shirt and shorts?
No, I will not.
I like the Spider-Man onesie. I like it.
And just so you know, there is nothing on underneath because this thing is going to make me sweat. Okay.
All the way down, nothing on underneath?
You got to pay extra for that knowledge.
Everyone's getting paid except me.
Well, what do you have to dress
What's
up
your
in?
side hustle?
Nothing, apparently. The like, wait, you guys are getting paid?
Yeah. And going live in 3, 2. There it is. There it is.
There it is. I
There
see
it
it this
is.
time.
Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
It's Donnie, Ryan, Blue.
No, it's Spider-Man, Yoshi, and some guy who didn't put in any effort whatsoever.
Nobody gave me the memo. I thought we were nihilists. That's what my costume is this year. Nothing
The
matters.
Buffalo Bills fan,
Yeah.
life doesn't matter. There is no joy.
So we have Spider-Man, Yoshi, and a jilted Buffalo Bills fan.
That's accurate, yeah.
Okay. All right. Ryan put a lot of thought into his costume this year.
Mm-hmm.
Just 17 years of anguish is what I put into this cast.
All right. So welcome to Gamers Week podcast. And like the name says, we analyze the best, worst, and weirdest headlines of the past week in the video game industry. This is episode 139, and today is Wednesday, October 30th, 2024. One day before Halloween. So would this technically be Devil's Night?
Yes.
So if you're here, if you're out there, fire it up, cause some damage, do some arson.
Do some arson.
Bring out your guns and maybe throw somebody out of a big balcony window till they plummet till their death, and then they come back and avenge their lover and themselves. Just be mindful that can happen.
This segment was brought to you by something law firm. Please do not take out advice on anything that Donnie just said, as it was intended for entertainment purposes only.
Yes, we should have that as a trailer. Entertainment purposes only. Do not replicate. Do not take advice. So my name is donniegretro, and I will be your host this evening. But I am not alone, as you can see by my two wonderful co-hosts here. My first co-host has submitted paperwork to change his name officially to Floppy Payne. Please give a warm toilet seat welcome to Floppy Gamebrews.
Oh, you said warm toilet seat. Oh, nothing worse than that.
Well, there's two sides to it. So if it's a heated toilet seat, that means you're super bougie. But if it's warm because it's a public toilet and somebody else was in there for 10 years, see, it depends.
Yeah, it does.
Thank you for giving me the ick.
And my second co-host has requested only one thing on her dressing room rider when she puts on a show, and that is Silk Song and nothing more. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Writer's View, a.k.a. Blue Williams, with us tonight. Blue, how are you doing this evening?
That is why, now, if everyone must know, that is why I haven't done any live appearances in probably 2 or 3 years. Because no one will meet the rider requirement to have Silk Song ready to go in the dressing room.
So the ice cold the ice cold cherry Coke.
Thank you.
Sorry, I don't know why I said tab, but it was cherry Coke and something else ice cold that you wanted.
It was the cherry Coke.
And
it was the Pamplemousse Liqueur.
Pamplemousse Liqueur.
And the Nitro Cold Brew. All three of those.
And you would totally get rid of those to have Silk Song on display.
I would never have any of those ever again to have Silk Song.
Wow.
Don't quote me on that, but right now it seems...
I am quoting you.
We got it saved. Sorry.
Yes. I got to take these off.
Oh, is that not working?
It's not working for me, no. The Yoshi glasses, they're amazing, but in short bursts.
Well, now that we're done with the intros, let's go ahead and move on to the reviews, reactions, and requests for this evening. At Busted Router says, if you think of Sega in the late 80s and 90s when it was a major console maker and there were fewer big-name developers, you couldn't say video games without Nintendo and Sega coming up. Now it's just another dev in a saturated market. I miss those days.
Frank says, holy shit, Yoshi was blue this whole time. See, I told you. This hoodie and these glasses... top tier competition quality cosplay.
Let's see who this masked person really is. It's Blue.
And she would have got away with it if it
wasn't for Frankie.
These damn kids.
Terry Baca says, very late to last week's episode, but dying laughing at finally finding out what the G stands for in Donnie G Retro. We are just going to pass on by that one.
Tis.
And Santa Barbara, California says, we have a city calling in. First time caller, long time listener. I didn't listen to the episode yet, but saw this in the notes, and I can't resist clicking on a link. You just need a few $100s to pay for some fees, and then you can give me some of your millions of dollars.
That's all we need?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what it takes?
Yeah, it's the classic thing of if you just send me enough to cover these banking fees, then I'll be able to give you millions of dollars.
Think about that. We got reversed scam because they're the ones who clicked on the link. Look at that. Right? What a future we live in.
I don't like that.
No, sir, I don't like it.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to our patron shoutouts.
Well, we couldn't do what we do without the help of our gorgeous patrons. Here are the generous folks supporting Gamers Week on Patreon. Emo S, Bill Tucker, The Real Retro Game Brews, Fruitcakes, Pickled Pepper, Ducks with Thick Thighs, absolutely the best podcast, Wizard of Zardoz, Bobson Dugzant, Blues Little Sis, Loud Moth, Retro Blast Pat, B&T Zilla Guy, The Mad Milkman, Seven Castle Forest, Crunchy Kong, Sheriff Snacks, Frank Grande, Love Retro BTW, Steven Sand, Ramboski, Terry Kinnair, Agil 2020, Don't Make Me Pull This Car Over, Sir Coffee of House Blend, first of his name, Hybrid Divide, You Fall Before Me, Davey PGH, the Pixel Pond family, including Shannon and Luke, Zach, huge thanks, number one Blue Sick Voice fan, John Baran, Sassy with the Smashing Pumpkins, Evo Lust, Ry's Secret Best Friend, Mega Retroman, Gamma Troid, Mora Deeb, and Michael LeKite. If you like what you hear today, we really hope you do. Please consider joining us on Patreon. Your support helps cover the cost of producing the show, as well as cool stuff we'll be doing like prizes and giveaways. You also gain access to our bi-weekly patron-only bonus cast called Gamers Week Uncut, Patrons with Benefits. Visit patreon.com/gamersweek or follow the link in the show notes to learn more.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to the headlines.
This headline segment is proudly sponsored by the Retro Game Club podcast. It's a fantastic, family-friendly retro gaming podcast. In each episode, Rob and Hugh pick 2 games to play and discuss, as well as news, interviews, and other topics. Right now, they want to know, what home console ports do you like better than the arcade originals? Send your answers to email at retrogameclub.net or follow the link in the show notes.
So there's 2 that come to mind right away for me.
Okay.
One of them is a little controversial. I've always liked the Super Nintendo port of Turtles in Time better than the arcade. Just thought it was seemed to flow better. Just like the list of like end bosses and stuff. Always liked it a little bit better. The second one is Ninja Gaiden. If you've ever played Ninja Gaiden in the arcade, it is clunky. It just doesn't feel intuitive. Your sprite is enormous, and Ninja Gaiden on NES is probably one of the best games out there, right? And it plays so much better. I mean, granted, it doesn't look as good, but what can you expect from the technology back then? But those 2 are the first 2 that like just boom, right to my head, top of my head.
It's funny whenever I was like immediately thinking, I'm like, I don't think there's any home console port that's better than the arcade. But as soon as you said, as soon as I heard the words, I'm like, yep, he's got a point, because Ninja Gaiden, is very slow, it seems. And it's, of course, it's designed to be a quarter muncher and all that stuff. Right. So the NES port of Ninja Gaiden, I would say 100% hands down, is better than the arcade. Now, as far as any other arcade games that were ported, I don't really know off the top of my head.
TK85 says, any fighting game port, because randos can't destroy me and make me lose my quarters. Which, on that note, I also had 2 that came immediately to mind, and one of them was Tekken Tag, because
really
it looks better on the PS2 than it does in the arcades, and also because, I mean, yeah, you can just play it to your heart's content at home and not have to worry about losing your quarters or losing to randos or all that. The other one that came to mind was Bubble Bobble.
Oh,
I know.
No, please don't.
It's just, it feels like it belongs on consoles.
Right. I will 100% agree with that. Mm-hmm. Agent Nil said, Rygar. I got to agree with that as well. Rygar, I think, is really, really excellent, specifically on the NES. Not as fluid, not as fun in the arcade. And you know what's interesting about that is the Rygar, if I remember right too, from the NES has a different soundtrack for certain areas, right? So
maybe,
yeah. It's just, I don't know. Rygar is not the first game that I would pick to play, but I would definitely agree that the NES port heck of a lot better than the arcade.
Did they have Ghosts and Goblins in the arcade?
They did.
Okay.
Ghosts and Goblins would definitely be one better on the home console, because otherwise you're just throwing your money down the toilet.
Absolutely.
And there was like a Castlevania-like game that I think was an arcade game. It's on like the Castlevania collection. And that one is just atrocious. It's
It's
so
not better
garbage.
on the Castlevania collection, though.
Right.
Let's be clear.
But I think it's a good point, or at least a good question, because so often the ports just didn't live up. I mean, anything that was ported to the Atari 2600, for the most part, was such a
Crap.
complete shell, of what it should have been. I mean, even when you're like, wow, this wasn't that bad for the Atari 2600, right? You're still going, it doesn't feel the same. Like a Donkey Kong, for example, right? It's playable, it's doable, it works on the Atari, but it's still not anywhere near, excuse me, the arcade game.
Bless you.
So,
Yeah, when you take Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. on the Nintendo, now those were almost one-for-one accurate representations of the arcade classics. The Atari 2600 was just a complete dumpster fire whenever I remember the first time I played Pac-Man on the 2600. I was like, yeah, man, I've seen these things in the arcades. This is going to be great. What the hell is this? Yeah. I was like, oh, these are video games? Well, I think I'll just go outside.
and to your point, even about Donkey Kong on the NES, that still wasn't a perfect port, right? They completely took away the whole pie stage and everything. So even that, while it's not bad, it was a much better attempt.
But I mean, let's acknowledge that when home console ports began to truly rival that of the arcades, that was when the arcades went away.
That's true.
Yep.
And now it's funny because you go to an arcade nowadays, the one now it's just a card, right? You don't actually put quarters into it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the games that you play on console are now reverse ported and became arcade games. I mean, like the Fruit Ninja touchscreen one, it's just like, this is so lazy. Come on.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to this week's headlines. PlayStation's multiplayer shooter Concord launched on August 23rd, 2024. Today, Sony is shutting down the game's developer Firewalk Studios. This was Firewalk's first and only release. Sony acquired the studio in 2023, with Concord seemingly a major part of the company's push into live service games. Concord's initial development deal was around $200 million, according to a new report, offering a glimpse of how much it cost Sony to develop its disastrous live service game, which lasted just 2 weeks, before being unceremoniously shuttered. The report says that $200 million was not enough to fund Concord's entire development, nor did it include the purchase of the Concord IP rights or Firewalk Studios itself. PlayStation Studios CEO Herman Hulst says Sony will learn from its experience with Firewalk Studios. The PvP first-person shooter genre is a competitive space that's continuously evolving, and unfortunately we did not hit our targets with this title. We will take the lessons learned from Concord and continue to advance our live service capabilities to deliver future growth in this area.
It makes, the way you put that, it makes it sound like they just fell a little short. They were like the geriatric guy at the basketball game that has a half-court shot away from hitting their target.
Yeah, it's such a weird response to this because on the one hand, you're like, okay, Concord failed. It was bad. They pulled it completely off sale after 2 weeks. Then come to find out, like they sunk $200 million into this and it didn't cover the cost and it didn't cover the purchase of the studio. And they still, for whatever reason, are not trying to salvage something from this game, anything from this game. I know that some reports that PlayStation never confirmed nor denied that the game only sold 25,000 units, but surely 25,000 units would have been enough to cover the cost of the servers, to keep this game up and running, and maybe slowly it gains an audience, or maybe you can change some things, bring new people in, whatever. The fact that they just pulled the plug on this so quickly is a little bit odd. I mean, we knew that it had an 8-year development, so they must have put a ton of money into it, but seeing a $200 million price tag on it, that doesn't even account for everything. It's just a very weird response.
That was just the development of the game, correct? To help them with the development?
development deal was around 200 million.
Yeah, the development deal itself. So like it said, Sony didn't acquire the studio. It didn't acquire the end of the IP rights or anything like that. And that's where it's like, after it says that, then it's like, hey, we're going to learn from our mistakes. I don't know what kind of business people you have running the show over there, but they bought the studio, right? They acquired it. What would they buy it for? A Rice Krispie treat and a tab?
What do you get for these assholes? A used puck bag? You bring up an interesting point. And I think one of the things that stems from this is that when it was all the ink was put on paper and signed and everything was put together, this was 8 years ago when Overwatch was the hottest thing out there, right? And that everyone was gushing over this. And they're like, you know what? This is going to be great. We're going to push this out, and this genre is never going to die. Well, apparently they didn't call Miss Cleo and ask for her advice.
Miss Cleo.
Oh my God. That's a deep cut. Miss Cleo.
Rest in peace.
I wonder how Miss Cleo. Oh, she's dead?
I think she's dead.
She didn't see that coming, huh?
No.
Miss Cleo dead. No, she's still alive. No, she's dead. No, she's dead. She died July 26, 2016 at 53 years old.
Oh.
So she's been gone for 8 years.
Satisfaction said, I could see the previous owner of Firewalk crying of laughter on his yacht.
Ducks in Disguise said, it's Spider Dawn.
Spider Dawn, Spider Dawn.
Whip, thwip, 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 thwip. For those of you at home who are listening, Donnie's throwing out fingers.
A certain finger.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
You not. I'm about ready to tear this whole thing off.
At least pull the hood down. That'll let some of the heat out.
Oh, good Lord.
Oh my God, it's Donnie.
Anyway, back to Concord. I think we can all agree that Firewalk was a victim of PlayStation being greedy in that they saw Overwatch and all they saw was dollar signs, and they thought this was going to be their ticket to easy money from here on out. When it didn't work that way, they just pulled the plug and said, yeah, we're cutting our losses immediately. But I mean, again, to go back to my earlier point of it's a little bit weird that they're not trying to salvage at least something. Like if you think about Redfall.
Right.
Microsoft tried to salvage something from that game, even though it was in all respects a failure. But Sony's just not even f***ing around with Firewalk. They're just like, forget it. It kind of makes you wonder if there wasn't some internal disagreement over this studio and this game about what should be done about it. And when it failed, whoever was on the side of we didn't want this to begin with is like, told you, it's gone.
And I wonder if there's any rolling heads, for lack of a better term, at Sony for this as well. I mean, I would imagine somebody's got to be held accountable for this.
Of course.
Right?
Of course. There has to be.
And the CEOs aren't held accountable.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about CEOs. There's somebody who pushed for this, who was like, this is going to be our cash cow. We're going to get there. And yeah, it didn't work out. And like you said, everybody else who was like, I don't know, Steve.
Is it going to be like in Fun with Dick and Jane, where Jim Carrey's character gets that promotion? He's told he's going on C-SPAN, and the next thing you know, they're like, "Hey, we've gotten word that your company is involved in like all these different illegal practices." And he's like, That's what they're going to do to some dude that worked in Firewalk Studios. It's like, "Hey, we need you to go and talk to the press about this game," and it's just like a complete show.
Oh my God.
Taken85 says, someone needs to Photoshop Concord with the C as a send sign.
Dollar bills, y'all.
So, you know what I think as well is interesting about Concord is that, to your point, Blue, Xbox threw out a lot of money to try to save what was going on with Redfall. They must have determined at some point that like it would have cost them even more money, and the risk to that would have been greater than to just dump $200 million plus of what they paid in order to get this game up and running. So that's got to tell you something as well in the background is happening. Because usually most companies would be like, we need to salvage this because, hey, we're in the hole. I mean, maybe, granted, Sony, is a large company. I'm sure they can absorb some of that, but still, you would expect them to try. Where they were just like 2 weeks, they're like, boop, boop, pull the plug.
Yeah.
F this, I'm out.
Yep.
So, Blue, you said they sold how many units? 25,000?
That was the analyst number of how many units they sold.
Okay, so 25,000, and you take that, like, being generous, I think, with the $59 price tag. You're talking about like
69.
somewhere around.
Oh wait, no. This was a $40 game.
So 1.2 million, 1.3 million that you get back that you could have used to cover the servers, like you said, and maybe have a little bit, you have the PlayStation Plus that you have to have access in order to play these games and stuff like that. I think you could have recouped just a little smidge of money with that game, like maybe keep the servers running for a couple of months or even a year.
Well, the one thing is, though, you're talking about the retail price of it. It probably what they're selling it at to retailers is half of that, if not less.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's one thing to take into consideration. Still, if you're talking about 1.2 million, 600,000, doable.
Yeah. How much does it cost to keep the server running and like a skeleton crew to keep the game operational for a year?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. And depending on where they have these servers stored, if it's in the cloud, then you pay for by use.
Yep.
And that can rack up a hefty bill. Whereas, you have it in a data center someplace, then you've got to pay for utility. You've got to pay
storage,
for data center storage and security and all that crap.
Yep.
Ducks in Disguise says, I don't know if the budget is even half that. I'd expect the game and its presentation to be way more interesting than what Concord delivered.
Right. Completely agree.
$200 million budget, and you delivered crap.
And from all intents and purposes, I got the feeling like it was uninspired. It wasn't interesting. It wasn't much to delineate it from its, where the provenance of Overwatch comes from. So,
like most games nowadays.
Well, and the thing is, though, if you're going to wait 8 years to release, I guess, your version of Overwatch, you should probably make it really, really cool and more interesting and have a billion more features. Or, I don't know, maybe Overwatch got too feature heavy, so less features, whatever it is. Solve a problem so people go, I like this better.
Yeah. But like we already said, I think this was just an example of Sony seeing dollar signs and being greedy, and they just thought it was going to print money, and it didn't work out that way.
All right, next up, Roblox Corporation has announced changes to its child safety policies that'll impact the way preteen users can interact with its popular gaming platform. The move follows a damning report calling Roblox an X-rated pedophile hellscape that exposes children to grooming, pornography, violent content, and extremely abusive speech. Roblox sent out an email to parents this week announcing that children under the age of 13 will soon need parental permission to access chat features by default. Additionally, Roblox is introducing a new type of account for parents next month that, when linked to their child's account, will let them update parental controls from their own device and get insights into their child's online activity and friends. Wow, a novel idea. The company calls these changes part of its commitment to making the platform one of the safest online environments for our users, particularly the youngest users. And I have to say initially that this is as far as you're going to say, oh, you're going to need your parents' permission to. Most of these kids can get their parents' permission to buy a gun because all they have to do is like, oh, mom, hey, can you just sign this? I need to do this. Yeah, sure, whatever. Get out of my hair.
But I mean, kids under 13 up until now did not need parental permission to access chat features. That's crazy. I mean, personally, I think that once you hit 13, and as far as Roblox is concerned, 13 seems to be pretty much adult. It's fine. Let them chat with whoever they want. They're 13. Yeah. What could go wrong? This stuff is crazy to me that this was not already in place. Like from day one of Roblox, that it took this long.
And honestly, it had to do with an article that was published that really shed light on this. But they knew that this was a problem. We've talked about it before, right? And it took this article to make those changes. This should have changed a long time ago. Mm-hmm. This should have been something that as soon as they started to realize that this was a pattern, like, we're going to update this because you know what? we're going to be in trouble.
Hey. Let's not be hasty. Just because Roblox itself reported 13,000 instances of child exploitation last year alone, that doesn't make it a pattern, okay? You're jumping to conclusions.
Because we have an acceptable amount of that, right? Per capita.
Right. The allowable parts per million of pedophiles in the game.
Yeah. They didn't exceed the threshold. So it's all good.
It's fine. Everything's fine. There's no problems.
And this is why, though, game companies need to police themselves. They need to be active, right? And at the end of the day, it's going to cost them a lot more to not be active, to be lazy, than it is to be proactive about this stuff. I mean, do you hear the same things happening with Fortnite? And that's just as easily as popular as Roblox is?
No, and I think it's because of the mini games and stuff like that you could use. Like Roblox is a whole creative type thing where you could create environments and worlds and games inside of Roblox where Fortnite doesn't have that capability. Fortnite just has a chat, actually not even really a chat feature. They have voice chat, but that's through whatever. I think with Microsoft, it's the Xbox Live. With PlayStation voice chat, or Discord or what have you. But that's like the Switch, I don't believe has that capability. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
I'd have to ask my kids.
The Switch does not. You're right. I don't even have to know. I know that the Switch doesn't.
Yeah, Nintendo historically knows better than just allow free chat.
It's just that Roblox is the check engine light on your car. It's on, but it's still probably running fine.
I mean, Donnie, when you say it's going to cost them more to not have these things now. I mean, I hope that's the case, because up until this point, I mean, there's been like some chatter around in the fringes, I guess, of the Roblox world, the Roblox ecosystem that says maybe this place isn't great the way it is right now, but it makes so much money that it doesn't matter. And up until now, Roblox hasn't wanted to make those changes that would disrupt the ecosystem. So whether you question the intentions of this report by Hindenburg Research or not, which even their name suggests that they were out to take somebody down.
Oh, humanity.
Whether you trust their motivations or not, hopefully as a result of the stuff that they brought to light, it will start to cost Roblox more to not implement these things.
Has anybody sued or brought any lawsuits against Roblox?
I believe there have been, but nothing to the level of what we saw, like say with Nintendo and Sega going in front of congressional hearings. I think that if this continues down that path, and your local congressman or senator starts to hear about this, there will be an inquiry. And
of course,
I mean, they're banning TikTok for stuff like that. So why do they care about Roblox?
Well, they're trying to ban that, but it's so far they haven't been successful.
Sure.
And the thing I want to say is it's kind of like the car insurance companies or the manufacturers, where they're like, is it going to cost us more to fix the issue, or are we going to have to pay out
or to
more
settle it afterwards?
Exactly. Yeah. So if Roblox hasn't seen a lot of lawsuits or litigation right now, they're probably like, well, we're just kind of untouchable, all right, this is kind of getting up there. Let's go ahead and institute a few changes to make everybody feel all safe and happy. But then after that, it's almost like a Band-Aid on a big crack in the dam. And eventually it will burst and they will be up creek without a paddle.
Yeah, I did a quick Google search, and it looks like the only lawsuits, at least that are coming up in the first 20 or so, search results on Google have to do with it being a virtual casino and or addictive to children.
What I mean,
which, I mean, you can't, those are bullshit lawsuits anyways.
Of course, because most parents just stick a tablet or a computer screen or whatever in front of their children's faces at the age of 1 and say, hey, you raise my kid.
There's an app for that?
With microtransactions.
Yep. Oh, God.
Keep my child out of my hair for another hour. Yes, I will buy 10 of those.
Yeah. While I sit on my own screen.
Yep.
Next up, after a 3-year fight, the U.S. Copyright Office has denied a request for a DMCA exemption that would allow libraries to remotely share digital access to preserved video games. That ruling cites the belief of the Entertainment Software Association and other industry lobby groups that there would be a significant risk that preserved video games would be used for recreational purposes. Porpoises. A common harbor porpoise. This ruling ignores the fact that libraries already lend out digital versions of more traditional media like books and movies to everyday people for what can only be described as recreational purposes. Members of the Video Game History Foundation who began the petition, I don't know what the hell's going on with me, are naturally unhappy with the decision. Unfortunately, lobbying efforts by rights holder groups continue to hold back progress, the group says in its statement, noting the ESA's absolutist position that it would not support a similar sort of copyright reform under any circumstances. So I'm trying to make sense of this. The ESA and other lobby groups said that there would be a significant risk that preserved video games would be used for recreational purposes, right? Mm-hmm. They're worried that content made available from a library is going to be used for recreational purposes.
Mm-hmm. And that's good enough that the U.S. Copyright Office said, sounds legit. We're denying this.
And, the reason that DVDs and books are so readily available at a library, for example, is that often they are considered to be an art form. I think anybody who was born after, like the 1970s, maybe late 1960s, looks at video games like it's a joke, right? It's just electronic beep boops, and this isn't really art. But I think we all look at it that way, that it is an art form and that, there are certain things that deserve preservation. So to deny that, it's a little disappointing, of course, right? Because we see the utility of keeping these things around. The only other piece, though, is when it comes to libraries, have you been to your local library lately?
Mm-hmm. It's been about a year since I've been to the library. I used to check out CDs and bring them home and listen to them.
So you're doing exactly what they're afraid of. And then again, that's music, right? So they would
yes.
let you have access to their music. But, God forbid they do that with video games.
I think it's a double standard that is completely infuriating. Mm-hmm. I mean, even as hard as the music industry historically has been about DMCA stuff, you're allowed to rent CDs from libraries.
Right.
But for some reason, video games fall under this special category of media where they don't seem to really count. And they couldn't possibly be used for anything historical, and they're not worth preserving from educational perspective, anything like that. They're just property. That's it. They're just pure property. Mm-hmm. I mean, how dare you even suggest such a thing that libraries could loan these out? People would enjoy them.
I know that a lot of libraries have in the past made video games available. I'm just afraid that with this ruling that's going to be taken away. Mm-hmm. And that's scary. Again, for a multitude of reasons. But at the end of the day, it's also a great place for people to access things that maybe on a budget as well. You're paying through your taxes for your library, which is what makes it the best part of this, right? Is that we collectively as a society are saying we want this thing to be open and information to be accessible. So when you rent something, it's vastly cheaper. Often, especially with books and DVDs, from my experience in the past, they're free as long as you promise to bring them back. Mm-hmm. So,
and there's late charges.
Right. Yeah. If you're you'll incur late charges for sure. But nonetheless, I hope we don't see a mass exodus of these video games from libraries. And then the other part to it is, well, what do they do with the collection that they currently have? Is this something where it's just going to end up in a landfill somewhere, or
an employee takes it home, something like that?
Right. It sells it on eBay.
Yeah. I mean, so much of law is built on precedent. Why does that not apply here?
Right.
I don't know.
There's no good reason.
No, there's not a good reason. And in all reality, the fact that if you have preserved video games, are we talking about games for like the Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, 3DO, stuff like that? Because the common household doesn't have those games. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what their fear is. For people like me who might take a 3DO game, come home and make an ISO of it, well, guess what? You can do that easily online. I don't need the library to assist me in that.
Mayonnaise Chase says, the only library I need is Steam. They'll never take my games away, right? Right? Gabe?
It's that Anakin and Padme.
Yeah. Right?
Me, right?
The Padme, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, a terminally ill Borderlands fan has asked if there's any way he can see Borderlands 4 early, and Gearbox boss Randy Pitchford has promised that we're going to do whatever we can to make something happen. On October 23rd, die-hard Borderlands fan Caleb McAlpine shared that he was diagnosed with terminal stage 4 cancer, which left him unsure whether I will be around for Borderlands 4, which is currently scheduled to launch sometime in 2025. This uncertainty prompted a post from McAlpine in the Borderlands 3 Reddit community asking if anyone knows how to get in touch with Gearbox to see if there's a way to play the game early. Long shot, but I thought I would try. Pitchford was informed of the post and said on Twitter that Caleb and I are now chatting via email, and we're going to do whatever we can to make something happen. This isn't the first time the Borderlands community has rallied to aid ill fans. In 2019, a Borderlands fan named Trevor Eastman, diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and given a year to live, was able to play Borderlands 3 early after Gearbox connected with him following a Reddit post of his own. Eastman sadly passed away that same year, and Gearbox went on to create a legendary weapon called the Trevinator in his honor. That was a really nice gesture by them. But I wonder, for every person that's terminally ill, there is another person out there who is not, who is just using this as an excuse to get to play the game early and be like, fooled you.
Yeah. I mean, that was my first thought is you're right that the more publicized incidences like this become, the more likely that people are going to start abusing it. And then you end up with people like Caleb McAlpine, who is now, when he wants to play Borderlands 4 as his dying wish, he actually has to prove that he's dying. Here's my medical records. Here's my diagnosis. Here's a letter from my doctor saying that I'm actually dying. Can I please play this game? And it's just, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
The only other thing that leaves a bad taste in my mouth is this is the exact plot of Fanboys.
Yeah, they stole it.
I mean, don't get me wrong. If an idea comes from a movie and it's good, run with it. Utilize that.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it doesn't get you in trouble.
Well, good point, because there's a lot of times where you go, everyone here would be arrested. And they just walk away like it's no big deal, right?
Yep.
So I guess the question I would ask is, do you think as developers and publishers of games, if this becomes more and more prevalent, is this going to be an expectation? Is this going to be something where every publisher has to grant the wish of someone else? Like it feels like that slippery slope. And I know that's kind of a logical fallacy, but where does it end as far as things go? I mean, goodwill is goodwill, but it's, to your point, if there's almost 8 billion people on this planet, right? Conceivably, you could probably have somebody who has terminal cancer every single day come in and play your game, right? Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate, of course, but the fact of the matter is, I guess what I'm trying to say is I love that a studio stepped up to help someone who is clearly a huge fan of their game and more than likely has earned their right to be able to play such a game, considering that they just don't know if they've got enough time to actually play it. I think that's fantastic. I just wonder where this ends up. And to your point, it could be fraud. It could be just a sheer volume of people, or all of a sudden, if you're a developer and you're not willing or you're not able to grant the wish of somebody, then all of a sudden you're the jerk, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
That's kind of, I think, what's more likely to happen is because think about what kind of version of Borderlands 4 they're going to be able to offer this guy. Mm-hmm. It's probably not going to be great. So in some sense of it, you could think that it wouldn't even be worth it to try this kind of fraud because what they're going to offer you is not going to be that special. Or maybe they, work really hard on a on a small portion of the game. Like you get to do a campaign, and that's what we can offer you. But you're right in that a lot of games, I think, wouldn't even be able to offer that much to somebody who said, I'm going to die in 6 months. Can I please play your game? They'd be like, we really wish you could, but it's just not ready.
We haven't hit the crunch time.
Right. Well, and with games announcing themselves, the big AAAs announcing themselves 6 years in advance of their release.
Right.
I mean, that's entirely possible that there would just be nothing for these people to play.
So that's how these studios get around that now, is that they don't announce the games 6 years ahead of time. And then they just like within a year, like they're like, hey, we've got Borderlands 4 is coming out next year. And they're like, oh my God, Borderlands 4, we never knew. And there you go.
Yeah.
All the bugs are taken out. So now if somebody did say, hey, I've got terminal cancer and I'd love to play your game, now you can give them, a decent 1 or 2 campaigns that they can play. And maybe not the whole game, or maybe you do. I don't know.
But I think the potential for abuse of this kind of goodwill shouldn't take away from how great it is.
I agree. 100%.
Of course.
I think that this is a hell of a gesture.
Mm-hmm.
Just imagine how good that person feels being able to be interacting with, the CEO essentially of that company and having conversations via email. I think that's awesome. You know what? We would all love that access for your favorite franchise, right? Blue, Team Cherry. All of a sudden, you were emailing back and forth with the head of Team Cherry. Like you would be over the moon.
And I guess if nothing else, they could tell you stories. They could invite you to the studio. They could give you lots of swag. Maybe you didn't get to play the game, but you got some special attention.
Or they told you an aspect of that story that isn't released yet. And now all of a sudden you've got the Luke, I am your father tucked in your back pocket because the big plot twist. And I think it might be,
Right. And that's going to go about as well as Nintendo always trying to keep their playtest secret.
Yeah.
Well, they have you sign a butt ton of NDAs as soon
what
as
does
you
it
get in
matter
there.
if I'm dying?
Oh, yeah, exactly. She's going to be dying. She's going to let this leak online.
Yep.
One of the stipulations, they pull the plug.
Yeah.
Oh.
They got somebody waiting outside of your house with a syringe. It's like, if you leak this, he's coming in and you're going to go night-night.
Only dreams now. Only dreams.
Oh. This conversation took a much darker turn than I thought.
It is us.
Frankie makes a good point. It would be cool if they could make a background character or a name or weapon or something in Borderlands 4 for this person to be remembered, just like they
100%.
did with Trebinator. And that goes to show about the kindness in these types of communities, not just video game communities. There was this is unfortunately a bad tale about somebody in the poker community who had said that he had cancer, and people in the poker community rallied around him. They paid for his entry into the World Series of Poker, which was $10,000. And come to find out, this piece of crap did not have cancer at all. So he got people to put up their own money for him to play in the World Series of Poker. Now, I don't remember if this guy had actually won anything. I don't think he did. But still, the fact remains that there are really evil people out there that are willing to take advantage of somebody just for their own personal gain.
Yeah.
And these people can die in a dumpster fire.
Yeah. And every piece of shit who will take advantage of people's goodwill for their own personal gain ruins it for somebody who could actually benefit from it. Yeah.
100%.
Yep.
So I guess if we take nothing else from this, it's don't be that guy.
Or girl. We don't discriminate.
Don't be that person. Fair.
There
Don't be
go.
that person.
Last but not least, one forward-thinking PlayStation fan has bought 24 years worth of PlayStation Plus to avoid increasingly common price hikes. Reddit user on Reddit in class said they decided to stack PlayStation Plus subscriptions until 2048 because of the absurd price increases the past few years. They plan to be gaming the rest of their lives, so decided it would save a good bit of money. Sony offers some discounts for those buying so much in one go, including one wild loophole that, after buying the 24 years of PlayStation Plus Essential, saw the premium upgrade reduced by 89%. As a result, they were able to get the full thing at around $2,000, a hefty discount. Sony last raised the price of PlayStation Plus in September 2023 from $59.99 to $79.99 for the most basic tier. This price adjustment will enable us to continue bringing high-quality games and value-added benefits to your PlayStation Plus subscription service, it said at the time. Analysts said this was inevitable, so another increase in the future isn't out of the question. Xbox Game Pass has seen a similar price rise, doubling from $9.99 at its launch in 2017 to $19.99 now.
As a recent purchaser of PlayStation 5, I was surprised to see that it was $79.99 as well, because I was under the impression that it was $60. I was like, you kidding me?
It was.
Now that's for a year, right? That's for a year of PlayStation Plus?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
$20 spread over 12 months. It's not so bad if you think of it that way. But when you look at it as a percentage of increase, then you're like, wait a second.
Right.
It seems not good.
Do you think this was a smart move? How old is this Reddit user?
Doesn't say.
So there's some assumptions that he's making.
Okay.
One, Sony's going to be around in 24 years. I don't know if that's a bad bet, right? But
I'd bet money on that.
The servers for the PlayStation 5.
Conceivably, that is more
Okay.
than likely probable. Two, PlayStation Plus is going to be around for the next 24 years.
That's the bigger question. That they'll even have consoles in 24 years.
Right.
That was going to be my third one, is how do you access this? It's going to be readily accessible to you on a piece of technology for the next 24 years.
Mm-hmm.
And three, that they actually live up to their promise of what you paid for.
Yeah.
Because if they just take everything away, they might give you a refund, but who knows? I don't read the terms of service. They might just say, all sales final. Have a good one.
Yeah, and they might if in 10 years they decide that we're not going to do PlayStation Plus anymore. Sorry.
I mean, they've changed their process of online so much anyway in the last couple of years that it's gone through all these transitions and things like that. Conceivably, they could change everything again. And I would imagine, or at least I would hope, the person would receive a refund for all those things. In fact, they may just do that just to make sure the guy pays up that 89% discount he got, right? Like, oh yeah, we're just going to change this one around, give you your money back, right? And then, oh wait, now you can only buy 12 years.
Well, if he put it on a credit card, he can easily declare bankruptcy or not pay the credit card, and then
Sure.
he just gets PlayStation Plus technically for free for the entire lifespan of PlayStation.
Ruin your
5.
credit for PlayStation Plus.
There you go. That's
Love
dedication. That's a fanboy.
It's about the principle. But I mean, I think a good kind of analogy is, let's say, like in 2010, you decided I'm going to pay for 24 years worth of Netflix DVD subscriptions. In 2023, Netflix officially stopped sending DVDs out.
Did they really?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Actually, it was only about a year ago. I'm surprised it lasted that long. But the point being is, the world could change so much in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. I admire this guy, and especially, the deal-making prowess of buying 24 years in advance. You're getting it 89% off. That's genius. You still had to pony up $2,000 right now, which is more than I would. But the audacity of it, I like it. I applaud that.
He could walk outside tomorrow and get hit by a bus. And there you go. I mean,
There's that.
I understand that you say that you plan to be gaming the rest of your life.
That could be tomorrow.
Exactly. Actually, in 5 years, you could find something that you absolutely love, another hobby besides gaming that you absolutely fall in love with, and gaming falls by the wayside. And the next thing you know, you're maybe gaming an hour a month, half an hour a month. And then look what you just did. You just wasted all that money. Now, if we look at the servers for like the PlayStation 3, I think some games you can still play online for the PlayStation 3 if I'm correct. Like they haven't completely shut down those servers like they have like with the Xbox 360 and stuff like that. But eventually they will go away. Within the next couple of years, they're going to announce, hey, we're going to shut down the PlayStation 3 store. We're going to shut down the servers that you can no longer play games that were online for PlayStation 3.
Well, yeah. But I mean, what he's paid for is the PlayStation Plus. So the library of the PlayStation Plus is going to constantly change and be updated based on whatever the current generation is.
Which, again, is an assumption that that's still going to be the case.
Yeah.
The third is, or the fifth, 12th, the 35th assumption.
We've run out of fingers for the assumptions.
Is that, society is still going to exist in the next 24 years?
There's not going to be some sort of societal collapse, apocalypse, something like that.
Breakdown, destruction of the electrical grid, nuclear war.
We're less than a week away.
Fingers crossed.
All right. Knock on wood.
Yeah, my student loans are due in 2 weeks. So if we could speed that up, that'd be great.
Was that a fingers crossed for the apocalypse?
Yes.
Because I don't want to pay my student loans.
I don't want to pay my student loans. Burn it all down. What if we look at it this way? Because we know the price of everything is increasing right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you had $2,000 in your pocket to spend on entertainment.
2 chicks at the same time.
As soon as I proposed the question, I knew you two were going to have some sort of answer along those lines.
I'm not spending $2,000 on PlayStation Plus. I'll tell you that.
I was going to say, if you could spend $2,000 and say, I will have entertainment for the next 24 years.
I'd buy a X-Men 6-person arcade.
And you're going to play that for 24 years?
Yes. Absolutely. There's 6 characters to play.
Ryan, somebody is selling X-Men versus Street Fighter arcade in my area for $350.
That's a steal. Oh my god.
It's the big pedestal one.
Yeah.
And I really want to get it, but I don't want to die.
May I have your watch when you are dead?
All right, it's time to take a look at our top 3 new releases for the week.
All right, before we jump into this, I got a question, Blue. It's the second one. Is that the name of it, or are we just not putting the name in?
That's the actual
name of it.
Okay.
Right. I was confused too when I first saw it.
I was like, are we just like, is this like a mystery, right?
That's the actual name of it.
Excellent. Okay. All right, let's start this. All right, first up is Clock Tower Rewind on the PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Translated and released outside of Japan for the first time, the 16-bit nightmare returns. Survive, hide, and avoid the deadly Scissorman in the legendary horror
What was
classic Scissorman. Play original mode to experience Clock Tower as it was initially released in 1995, or Rewind mode for extra content and improvements.
Redacted.
PS5, Xbox Series X and X, PC. In this fast-action isometric roguelike shooter, man, that's a mouthful, a shattering agent watches Black Iron Prison spiral into chaos as one of the last guards fight through monsters, rivals, and reanimated corpses of your fellow guards to escape the penitentiary alive. And lastly, Dragon Age, the Veil Guard. PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PC. The world is teetering on a knife's edge while corrupt gods unleash havoc across the continent. Nations war and factions splinter. Who will you trust? Unite a team of 7 companions in an immersive single-player RPG where you become the leader others believe in. But brace yourself, there are tough decisions to be made. Allies to inspire, and a fight that needs every sword, staff, bow you can muster. Let's take a look at these 3. Blue, what are you in for this week?
So this is one of those magical, sparkly weeks where I could play all of these.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sparkles. So Clock Tower Rewind, I have never played. I know it's available on emulators, but I've still never played it. So I am excited for one that is localized, that is ported to modern consoles. And I've heard so much about this game, and I'm so excited to play this for the first time. And I fully intend to play original mode so I can have as authentic an experience as possible while it's still being in English, so I know what's going on. Redacted. Looks f***ing cool. I don't know if this is a new like sub-genre that we should call Hades likes, maybe. But it's another one that it looks like if Hades was a shooter with cell-shaded comic book graphics. It looks so cool and so fun. And I am definitely going to pick that one up. Dragon Age, the Veilguard. It looks great. Here's the thing about this game. It seems like the early reviews are either it's the best thing ever or it f***ing sucks. And
So it was reviewed on Metacritic. Got it.
and there's all this extra noise from like the incels screaming at the top of their basement dweller voices about the fact that there's non-binary choices and transgender character choices in the game. And then there's like the other side who says, well, we love it because those things are in that. And what I'm not sure about is if it's a good game or not. Like if you can filter through all the noise, I'm not sure if this is a good game or not. At the end of the day, I don't know if I need yet another fantasy RPG in my backlog right now.
Right.
I still need to finish Baldur's Gate 3. So I would play this. I am open to this, but this is not going to be at the top of my list this week. Number 1 for me this week is Clock Tower Rewind. Number 2 is Redacted.
Nice. Donnie, what about you?
I'm not in the same boat where all three of these are something I could play.
No sparkles.
Dragon Age, I looked at it. I'm not into RPGs anymore, but it doesn't look like the typical RPG. I'm seeing the gameplay and it almost looks like a hack and slash. So in that regards, I'm not sure if it's like a crossover. Maybe if it is, I could be interested in playing it. There really isn't anything to draw me into it because these types of games are a dime a dozen anymore with the fantasy, the fantasy topics and stuff like that. So there's really nothing drawing me to Dragon Age. Not saying that I couldn't play it. It's just not really on my top list.
Redacted.
Looks amazing. Like I saw the gameplay and the colors, the color palette and all that stuff. And it looks like the gameplay, it looks pretty freaking cool. So I'm definitely in on
Redacted.
And Clock Tower Rewind. I've played Clock Tower before, long time ago. I didn't play it on the Super Nintendo. I played it on the PlayStation. I don't really remember the game. I remember being nervous and scared whenever I heard I saw the scissors and you hear the sound of him coming and you're just like, oh God. And back then, like 16-year-old me, like with a horror game, just like, okay, I'm shaking. I wonder what it's going to be like with the newer release and how true to the OG classic it's going to be. So for me this week, it's going to be a coin flip between Clock Tower Rewind and
Redacted.
And it doesn't matter which side it ends up on. I'm going to play the other one too.
There you go.
What about you, Ryan?
So I saw Clock Tower Rewind and I stopped looking at the rest of the games. I got to be honest.
Okay.
I love Clock Tower. Right. And I got the opportunity. So I was Retroblast Platt reached out to me and said, hey, we want to do episode of a few Super Nintendo games. Would you be interested in doing Clock Tower? And I said, well, I've never played it before because it's a Super Famicom game. And he's like, of course they have released English patches of it. Why don't you play the game and then we'll do an episode on it? And I loved that game. It was really, really well done. The suspense is fantastic. The jump scares. I mean, I'm not somebody who typically gets scared by that kind of stuff. And I remember sitting there going,
how is that again?
Mostly because it lures you into this sense of being like, oh, okay, well, I haven't seen him in a while. I'm feeling a little bit more confident.
No. When you haven't seen him in a while, that's when it gets bad.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, you die a million times playing that game the first thing through. And then, of course, the only gripe I have too is I hope that maybe they'll fix it. The rewind is the sound of the shoes as you're walking, right? That's just constant throughout the game. But other than that, there's so many plot twists. There's a lot of what the F is that kind of stuff as well involved with it. So it's really, really, really done well for this Super Famicom. And I'm just interested too of A, having it somewhere where it's readily accessible for me to play and not have to jump through hoops. And B, love to see what these increases to the story are and how they've changed it for the better. And maybe I'll hate it, maybe I'll love it. I don't care because the original game is still there. So
yeah,
I'm gonna Clock Tower Rewind 100%.
All right, before we move on, let's take a quick break to talk about our sponsor. This segment is proudly sponsored by A Gamer Looks at 40 podcast. The show explores the history of video games through the stories and experiences of the people who lived it. This week's question is, what scary movie have you seen the most times? Let Bill know your answer by sending him a tweet at A Gamer Looks at 40 on Twitter.
The classics. It's, for me, like the classic series, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Child's Play, Halloween, all of those. I've seen all of those movies a million times.
Does Alien count as a scary movie in this context, like a horror movie?
I'd say so.
I would say yes.
I have seen Alien a bajillion times. Even the director's cut where it's got all the extra content and stuff. I have seen that so many times. In fact, it's my Halloween tradition. So on Halloween, every single year, I watch Alien. And I've done that for the last almost 10 years. So that one's got to be it at the end of the day, right? And it's haunted house inside a spaceship.
Inside a spaceship.
You're not wrong.
If somebody said that Aliens is better than Alien, what would you say to that?
I would agree with it. I think Aliens is from a contextual standpoint, more action, more to like about it. Alien itself, while it's suspenseful the entire time, if that's what you're into and that's what you're looking for, that's just like the only element, right? It's a suspenseful movie. You get suspense, action, drama, betrayal. Yeah, you get betrayal in Alien too, but surprise endings. You get that in Alien too. Okay, never mind. I don't know. I've always liked Aliens better, but
they're apples and oranges.
Honest,
they're apples and oranges.
Yeah,
you can't really compare them.
Right.
I mean, you could say you prefer one over the other, but they're fundamentally different. So to say one is better than the other is just not fair.
I agree.
And don't forget, Blue attends the cinema. Blue, what about you? What horror franchise or horror movie have you seen the most?
Well, at the cinema, we have watched Psycho a gazillion times.
I thought she was going to say Nosferatu.
No, Psycho is one of my all-time favorite movies. Another one I have watched a gazillion times, Silence of the Lambs.
Yes.
Great movie.
Adore that movie. And it is one of the only book-to-movie adaptations where the movie is just as good as the book. So if you haven't read the book, highly recommend you read the book.
Did you see the Psycho remake with Vince Vaughn and Anne Heche?
Yes, that was a mistake.
Yeah?
That was a mistake.
Okay. I don't really remember it that much. So
that's kind of the thing. Yeah. Is like, this did not need to be done.
It's literally shot by shot. So all you got to do is it's the same movie. Just imagine Vince Vaughn's face the entire time.
It's in
Basically, the main difference is that they put in things that they couldn't have done in Alfred Hitchcock's day, where he's staring through the hole at her in the bathroom, whacking off. But they couldn't do that before. The third movie that I've seen a gazillion times is The Exorcist.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Good movie. Exorcist 3 still kind of scares me with the serial killer Brad Dourif, who's in the padded cell wearing the straitjacket, and the detective comes in and talks to him, and he channels this other serial killer in there. And there's this scene where it's late at night in this hospital. This nurse is making the rounds. She goes into this room. She comes out, closes the door, and from within from the same door comes this figure in white robes, walking behind her with these big ass scissors, going to cut her head off. And I'm just that scene, the build up, the anticipation of that scene, because it seems like it's very innocent. There's nothing about the scene. Next thing you know, you hear the music kick in, the bass kick in, and this thing's just walking behind her, and you're like, oh my God.
You might not want to play Clock Tower, then.
Yeah, that's what Clock Tower made me think of.
We got a scissors theme here tonight.
I like it. Hey there, fellow kids. It's time once again to take a trip back to when things were simpler. Before loot boxes and battle passes, when mobile games were something you played on your Game Boy or Game Gear or a Tiger handheld if your grandma didn't understand what you wanted. Yes, this is the Retro Rewind for October 1996. Taking a look at some of the top 5 songs for this month. Coming in at number 1, Bayside Boys with...
Oh, God, I know this. I recognize that band name, but...
That was Bayside Boys? Was a Macarena? I thought it was Los Del Rios.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a second. Then what was Bayside Boys? You know what? You're right. No, it's Los Del Rio. Los Del Rio Macarena, the Bayside Boys remix.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Bayside Boys remix.
The fact that I remembered it was Los Del Rios just hurt me.
Yeah, see, I just did. Yeah, I'd be embarrassed about that too. I just Googled Bayside Boys, and the only thing that comes up is the remix of Macarena.
Yeah, the Los Del Rio. Yeah.
Right. There's also a Bayside Boys Home Inc. organization in Clearwater, Florida.
I wonder what they do.
I already closed the tab, so.
Yeah, I don't even care.
Yeah.
Donna Lewis with I Love You Always Forever. I don't think I remember that one.
I love you always forever, near
Oh,
and far.
even far closer to get son of a...
Yep.
Celine Dion with It's All Coming Back to Me Now. Blackstreet with No Diggity, No Doubt. And No Mercy. Where do you go, my lovely? Ding, 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 ding. Where do you go? Where do you go? Oh, 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 oh. We go on to the top 5 movies of this month. The First Wives Club. Never seen it.
Oh, I loved that movie.
That's not bad. I'll give it that.
Sleepers, which is an amazing movie. I don't know if you know that one.
Mm-hmm.
It's depressing.
The Ghost in the Darkness.
That's a good movie.
The Long Kiss Goodnight.
That sounds depressing.
The Long Kiss Goodnight, I believe, is with Gina Davis and Samuel L. Jackson. I think it's Samuel L. Jackson. And D3, The Mighty Ducks. And if you didn't know what the premise of D3, The Mighty Ducks, they go to attend some
preppy
preppy academy school on scholarships after they just got done winning the Goodwill Games, which everybody thought was like the World Juniors or Team USA or whatever, which was definitely not. There's no way in hell the Mighty Ducks would have made Team USA because just doesn't.
Especially without having to try out. But that's the
exactly.
magic of Hollywood.
Well, and the thing too is if you think about the premise, like it starts off with win the Pee Wee Championship, right?
Uh-huh.
Then it's win the Goodwill Games, and then it's win an exhibition game against the varsity team.
It's not even a real game. It's just a JV versus varsity scrimmage.
They're going back.
It's the same.
So what were people playing back in October of 1996? Well, they were playing Cruisin' USA, Soul Edge version 2, and X-Men versus Street Fighter in the arcade.
Nice.
They were playing Jet Moto, Psychic Force, Tekken 2 on the PlayStation, Lunar Silver Star Story Complete, and Sega Worldwide Soccer 97 on the Saturn, Kirby Superstar and Wild Guns on the Super Nintendo, and they were playing Super Mario 64 and Pilot Wing 64 on the Nintendo 64 because that just launched last month in 1996.
Yep.
Now, interesting story about Wild Guns. 2 days ago on Marketplace in my area, somebody had listed about 15 Super Nintendo games for $90. And I looked at the list and I saw it immediately and I clicked on, is this still available? Because it was just posted. And somebody's actually on their way to get it. I'm like, son of a, are you kidding me? This listing was not live for more than 5 minutes. And somebody immediately, now some of the other games were like 2 copies of Super R-Type, Super Mario Kart, Legend of Zelda, et cetera, making this a worthwhile buy at $90. But Wild Guns was right in there. And I'm like, I think I froze for like a good 3 seconds because I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
That 3 seconds cost you.
It did. If I would have been quicker than that, I probably would have gotten it. But then again, the listing was actually removed from Marketplace. It wasn't marked as sold. It was listed as removed. So I think somebody white knighted and say, hey, that game right there, you've got, I'll buy that for $100. And he probably took it down. So yeah, it happens.
TCan85 says the last time 3 seconds cost Donnie so much, he had a kid. Also, GoldenEye 1971 has entered the chat, and we want to wish a very happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
GoldenEye.
Happy birthday, GoldenEye. And I love that kid with all my heart.
3 seconds worth it.
Yeah. Moving on. Altering to be Americanized is not fair, says reader. Why do Americans edit everything from anime to video games? Like with Biohazard, Resident Evil in the US, they cut out 2/3 of the intro. Why don't the people who edit products just put a label on it that says the video games have stuff unsuitable for little kids and not butcher the game? I mean, isn't that what the game rating system is for? This is from Steve Bowling in Paradise, California. And the staff at EGM writes back, in order to understand the answer, you must realize the Oriental culture is very different than ours. In good old USA, there are lawsuits, activists, and politicians that make even labeling a game risky action. Yeah.
That's a direct quote from the magazine from 1996. That's not a word that we used.
EGM, it was a different time. Also, there is the perception that nudity and violence as depraved in the U.S. In Japan, these aspects are accepted as part of their lives, and they aren't seen as being explicit. And I feel like nowadays, with the violence and the sex and the vulgar language and stuff like that that's more prominent on TV, I think we've become a little bit more of a lax society in the United States, as where Japan and Europe, they've been experiencing these things for a while.
And you know what? Let's be honest with you. Nintendo America set a pretty big precedent about what was censored and what wasn't, right? Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, it's the Puritans when they came over and essentially started to establish this country, which has held us back from being able to experience cool shit. So I blame them. 1600 Puritans.
Yep.
Those sons of bitches.
They us all over.
Right. Yep. And that, they didn't even wear their buckles in the right place. They put them on their shoes, not on their waist, What
did they know?
In the news this month, Sega's president resigns and a new team quickly in place. The man who successfully led Sega into a colossal 16-bit war with Nintendo is leaving. Tom Kalinske, president and CEO of Sega and Sega of America, announced his resignation on July 15th. The 52-year-old executive who guided Sega to a 50% market share in the $4 billion a year video game industry will be staying on with SOA until September 30th. Also leaving SOA are Hayao Nakayama and David Rosen, formerly chairman and co-chairman of Sega of America, respectively. Now, Tom Kalinske was very well known for his aggressive marketing decisions during his time at Sega, such as price drops, anti-Nintendo attack ads, and the famous Sega Scream TV campaign. Sega are often cited as key elements in the success of the Sega Genesis. The book Console Wars and the documentary film of the same name chronicles Kalinske's strategies and successes in competing with Nintendo. Now, while Kalinske was CEO of Sega of America, the company grew from $72 million to more than $1.5 billion, and the market value of Sega grew from less than $2 billion to more than $5 billion. His market strategies have been cited as the key factor in breaking Nintendo's dominance of the video game industry, added greatly by a strategic partnership that Kalinske developed with Blockbuster's CEO Joe Baxo and Blockbuster's retail strategy officer Mark Allen Stewart. The partnership including the renting of Sega hardware units at a time when in-home penetration, giggity, of Sega hardware was very low. Providing consumers with the ability to rent the hardware and then rent the video games became a form of marketing with increased retail sales of both hardware and software as a result. After having tendered his resignation from Sega on July 15, 1996 to take effect on September 30th, Isawa Okawa, who owned Sega at the time via CSK, reached out to him and invited him to work with the Okawa Foundation. Kalinske remained on Sega's board of directors following his resignation. And a little bit more deep dive into Kalinske, he moved over to a place called Leapfrog. I don't know if you know that. It's
I do.
Yeah. So this guy,
that
Kalinske,
was not a lateral move.
No. He has been successful with every single business that he ran. And I know that he was part of Sega of America, which they made some good decisions, not really with the 32X, but that was something that was kind of pushed on them while Sega of Japan was working on the Sega Saturn. He had made some decisions in North America that Sega of Japan were saying, like, we're not really sure. We don't agree with you. But the president at the time said, I hired Tom Kalinske to do this. This is what he's going to do. The decision is his. And it turned out to be very profitable for the company.
One of the most interesting things that you read there was the $4 billion game industry.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2023, the video game industry was $184 billion.
Right.
Look at how big this industry has ballooned in 30 years.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's at its peak now?
Nope.
No?
I don't.
It just becomes more and more mainstream because, I mean, we are still people who remember when, Red Ox says, I want holodecks. I mean, we still remember when it wasn't mainstream. We remember when it was a fringe, nerdy hobby that you could get made fun of for.
Of course.
And more kids are just going to grow up gamers, and it's going to become as commonplace as watching TV. And it's just going to keep growing.
I think it's a decent prediction. I don't think that gaming itself, as far as a hobby is concerned, is losing interest for the new generation. I think that's when hobbies die, right? Is when the new generation doesn't start picking them up. Unfortunately, I think comic books are like that, right? Where these kids don't play comic books, but they sure as heck play a lot of games. And so Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and whatever gen comes after that, if they're still playing games, it's still going to grow.
Mm-hmm.
It's only going to get bigger.
Yeah.
All right, kids. Well, thanks for hanging out with me this evening. Unfortunately, we can't stay here. We have to go back to being adults, back to a timeline where in less than a week, our country will vote on who is not going to keep their promises for the next 4 years. Wait, what's been happening this whole time?
Damn it.
Yay.
And on that note, it's time to wrap up the episode. Thank you for listening to episode 139 of Gamers Week Podcast. And a big thank you to the Retro Game Club Podcast, Love Retro BTW, A Gamer Looks at 40 Podcast, and Pixel Pond Production Company for sponsoring this show. Don't forget to check out their links in the show notes. If you want to connect with Gamers Week, follow us on Twitter at GamersWeekPC. Watch us right here on Twitch at twitch.tv/GamersWeekPodcast, where we will record live every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. Email us at gamersweekpodcast@gmail.com. Visit our merch store at gamers-week-podcast.creator-spring.com. Or if you want to do it the easy way, follow the link in the show notes. And last but not least, join us on Patreon at patreon.com/gamersweek. And finally, since you made it all the way to the end of this episode, please leave us a rating and a review to let us know how we did. We really do value your feedback. And while you're there, consider subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice.
Happy Halloween, everyone.
Yep.
Happy Halloween.
Hope you have a wonderful spoopy day.
In case you didn't know, Ryan was actually dressed up as PlayStation Studios CEO Herman Hulst.
Oh, GoldenEye didn't see the full. Hang on.
The full Monty?
There. Competition grade cosplay stuff right here.
Well, you say competition grade. Where's the saddle?
That's
not for this
I
show.
was going to say, she has one. You just can't see it.
Yeah, that is not for this show. Frank says the saddle is in the dungeon, obviously.
Obviously.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Well, I don't know if I can compete with that, but I do have.
Yoshi?
Nice.
Yeah?
All right, Yoshi, let's see that tongue.
That's going to cost you extra.
You got to punch her in the back of the head.
That's definitely going to cost you extra.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut, patrons with benefits. This is the unscripted, patron-only bonus cast with less editing and more dirty jokes. We don't know where the conversation will go, but we're sure it will be weird.
This fish just went right on my nipple, and I'm just like,
I Google Street Fighter 6. The first search result that comes up is people think they can see Ryu's in the Street Fighter 6 reveal.
Listen up here, kids. You're not going to want to get one of those VDSTDs things, right? Make it fall off. When you go, grab a pro. You'll be doing it for America.
that was perfect.
If you want to hear weekly episodes of our patron-only bonus cast, join us at patreon.com/gamersweek.